Put these two faces beside a map of prehistoric Britain. Most people will point to the pale one and say, that one belongs here. The darker face feels like the outsider. Ancient DNA turns that guess around. About 10,000 years ago, the man known as Cheddar Man most likely had dark skin and light-colored eyes. He wasn't passing through Europe. He was part of a Western hunter-gatherer population. So who changed? Not a single person. Over thousands of years, migration, mixing, diet, sunlight, and inherited variation shifted which pigmentation traits became common in different populations. Skin color changed. Human history never divided as neatly as the colors suggest.
A child opens a history book. Ancient Britain appears in fur, stone, and smoke, and almost every face is pale. The museum shows the same face, so does the movie. Repeat an image often enough, and it stops looking like a reconstruction. It starts feeling like a memory. Cheddar Man challenges that memory. He lived in Britain around 10,000 years ago, and DNA-based phenotype predictions suggest he most likely had relatively dark skin pigmentation and light-colored eyes. That is not a photograph. It is a scientific probability based on genetic evidence, and that distinction matters.
But he was not the only clue. A Mesolithic hunter-gatherer from Braña, Spain carried pigmentation variants showing that the very light skin common across much of Europe today was not yet widespread among Western hunter-gatherers. This does not mean every ancient European looked the same. They did not. Populations already varied, and lighter pigmentation variants were present in some groups. The more accurate takeaway is simpler. A place does not keep the same face forever. Humans are remarkably good at treating the people around them as the default version of history.
We project a modern face onto an ancient map, then act surprised when the bones tell a different story. Cheddar Man was not the one who seemed out of place. Our expectations were. The past did not always wear the face of the present. And if people lived under Europe's weak, seasonal sunlight for thousands of years before very light skin became widespread, then sunlight alone cannot be the whole explanation. So what else had to change?
Put two people beneath the same midday sun. The light reaches both of them, but it doesn't encounter the same amount of melanin. In places with intense UV radiation, melanin-rich skin provides stronger protection. Where UVB levels are lower or highly seasonal, lighter skin can let more UVB penetrate, which may help support vitamin D production. That matters, but it doesn't explain the whole story. Skin pigmentation is polygenic, meaning it's shaped by many inherited genetic variants. Human populations were already carrying different combinations of those variants long before they arrived in the same environments.
Europe didn't simply repaint everyone who moved north. People carried pigmentation genes the way travelers carry seeds. Hunter-gatherers moved, farming populations arrived, pastoralist groups followed. They met, had children, and passed along different genetic combinations. Ancient DNA suggests a variant near SLC24A5 became widespread relatively early, while one near SLC45A2 increased more gradually. Even the genetic traits associated with lighter skin didn't all spread at the same time. Diet changed too. So did clothing, shelter, and farming.
Each of those changes altered the conditions under which skin pigmentation mattered. Skin color changed across populations, not within a single lifetime. A map can make this history look surprisingly neat. The borders stay still, but the people don't. Sunlight created evolutionary pressure. Migration introduced new variation, and culture kept changing the rules. Which leads to a tougher question. If similar skin tones can emerge through different histories, how much can appearance really tell us about someone's ancestry?
A form gives you a few boxes and asks you to check one. An ancestry app colors the world in neat sections. Then a stranger looks at your skin and starts filling in the rest of your family history. The categories feel clean because the screen is clean. Human history was never that tidy. Population genetics can trace patterns of shared ancestry, migration, and genetic mixing. In plain English, it can show which populations exchanged genes more recently and which histories drifted farther apart over time. But those patterns do not stop neatly at modern borders.
They overlap, shift across geography, and contain enormous variation within the same population. Skin can preserve clues, but it cannot tell a complete life story. Similar skin pigmentation can also arise through partially different genetic pathways. Two people with nearly the same skin tone may stand at the ends of very different population histories. Two people who look dramatically different may still share a substantial amount of ancestry. Human appearance tells us something, but far less than we often assume. We like visual shortcuts. We notice skin long before we know someone's family tree, migration history, or genome. The trouble begins when a clue turns into a boundary, and that boundary turns into a hierarchy. Race is socially real because people, institutions, and laws make it matter.
But those social categories do not divide humanity into separate evolutionary lineages. The mistake was never recognizing that humans differ. The mistake was treating fluid, overlapping adaptations as proof that humanity is made up of permanent, separate kinds of people. Visible differences are real. Separate kinds of humans are not. And once that becomes clear, who changed is no longer a question about which humans became normal. It becomes a question about why we keep turning recent adaptations into ancient identities.
So, who changed? Not one person, entire populations did. Over thousands of years, people moved into Europe, met other groups, had children, changed their diets, and passed down different combinations of inherited genetic variants. Lighter skin pigmentation gradually became more common. The ancient European appearance that many people imagine today was never fixed. It was still taking shape. That distinction matters. Adaptation is not advancement. Ancestry is not hierarchy. Skin can preserve part of a population's history without measuring human worth or dividing our species into separate biological kinds. And once one familiar trait stops looking timeless, others do too. Skin was one chapter. Milk was another. One of the clearest recent changes in the human body is probably sitting in millions of refrigerators right now.